If you're over 60 and concerned about your blood sugar, your weight, or your risk of diabetes, I need to tell you about something that's probably in your kitchen right now. Something that spikes your blood sugar higher than table sugar. Something that's in foods labeled zero sugar. Something that costs food manufacturers just 20 cents per pound, which is why it's everywhere. And here's the disturbing part. Most people over 60 consume between 60 and 250 pounds of this substance every single year without even realizing it. I'm not talking about sugar. I'm not talking about regular potatoes or the vegetables your grandmother cooked. I'm talking about industrial starch, a highly processed ingredient that's directly linked to type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, Alzheimer's, and the kind of dangerous inflammation that accelerates aging. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what this ingredient is, where it's hiding in your food, why it's so much more dangerous than regular sugar, and most importantly, how to avoid it so you can protect your health and independence. Let me start with a question. Have you been trying to control your blood sugar by avoiding sweets? Maybe you've switched to whole grain bread or crackers labeled low sugar. If so, you might actually be consuming more of this dangerous ingredient than people who eat regular sugar. The ingredient I'm talking about is modified food starch, cornstarch, maltodextrin, and other industrial starches. Now you might be thinking, wait, isn't starch just a natural part of food? Don't potatoes and vegetables contain starch? Yes, they do. But there's a world of difference between the starch in a potato you bake at home and the industrial starch that's been created in a factory. Let me show you what starch actually is. At its most basic level, starch is a chain of sugar molecules linked together. Think of it like a necklace made of sugar beads. When you eat a whole food that contains natural starch, your body has to work to break down those chains, which takes time. The sugar is released gradually into your bloodstream. But industrial starch is completely different. In a factory, they take that chain of sugar molecules and they process it mechanically and chemically until those bonds become incredibly weak and fragile. They grind it into fine powder. They treat it with chemicals. They bleach it. They modify its structure at a molecular level. The result is a substance that breaks down into sugar in your body faster than table sugar itself. In fact, modified food starch can spike your blood sugar higher and faster than eating pure glucose. Think about that for a moment. You could be eating a product labeled zero sugar that raises your blood sugar more dramatically than a candy bar. Now let me tell you about the chemicals used to create industrial starch. One chemical commonly used is sodium trimetaphosphate. Studies have linked this to kidney stress and vascular calcification. For older adults already at risk for kidney problems and arterial stiffness, this is particularly concerning. Another chemical is vinyl acetate, which is considered a possible human carcinogen. Then there's sodium hypochlorite. That's bleach. The same bleach that's regulated as a potential carcinogen in water supplies is used freely in food starch production. Overexposure is linked to kidney damage and harm to the delicate tissues in your mouth and digestive tract. And here's one more: octenosuccinic anhydride. This chemical is widely used in infant formulas and beverages. Research suggests it may disrupt mitochondrial function if consumed in excess. Your mitochondria are the energy factories in your cells. As we age, mitochondrial function naturally declines. Consuming substances that further disrupt this process could accelerate aging and fatigue. Now, here's the kicker. All of these chemicals are classified as GRAS, which stands for generally recognized as safe. But GRAS substances are largely self-regulated by the food industry. There are no long-term studies required. No testing on older adults specifically. The food industry essentially regulates itself and assures us it's all fine. Let's look at what industrial starch actually does in your body. When you consume modified food starch, it breaks down into glucose almost instantly. Your blood sugar spikes dramatically. Your pancreas has to release a flood of insulin to deal with this sugar surge. If you're over 60, your pancreas is already less efficient than it was when you were younger. Forcing it to handle repeated massive insulin demands eventually leads to exhaustion. That's when insulin resistance develops. Your cells stop responding properly to insulin. Your blood sugar stays elevated. This is the path to type 2 diabetes, and industrial starch is paving that road. That surge of insulin does more than just control blood sugar. Insulin is a storage hormone. It tells your body to store fat. And when you repeatedly spike insulin with industrial starch, your body starts storing fat around your internal organs. This is called visceral fat, and it's the most dangerous type. Visceral fat doesn't just sit there passively. It's metabolically active. It releases inflammatory chemicals into your bloodstream. It disrupts your hormones. It increases your risk of heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and even certain cancers. Let's talk about inflammation. Chronic inflammation is now recognized as the underlying cause of most age-related diseases. Heart disease, Alzheimer's, arthritis, diabetes, even many cancers are driven by chronic inflammation. And industrial starch is profoundly inflammatory, especially in your gut. When you consume these highly processed starches, you're disrupting your gut microbiome. Industrial starch feeds the harmful bacteria and disrupts the beneficial ones. This creates dysbiosis, an imbalance in your gut flora. Dysbiosis leads to increased intestinal permeability, often called leaky gut. When your gut lining becomes permeable, partially digested food particles and bacterial toxins can leak into your bloodstream. Your immune system mounts an inflammatory response. This chronic inflammation affects your entire body. It contributes to joint pain, brain fog, fatigue, and significantly increases your risk of serious disease. Now let's talk about cholesterol, specifically small dense LDL particles. These are the truly dangerous form of cholesterol that can penetrate the arterial wall and contribute to plaque formation. High consumption of industrial starch dramatically increases the production of these small, dense LDL particles. It's not dietary cholesterol causing this problem. It's not even dietary fat. It's the refined carbohydrates, particularly industrial starch. If you're over 60 and you've been told you have high cholesterol, you might be on a statin. But if you're still eating foods high in industrial starch, you're continuing to produce the most dangerous form of cholesterol regardless of medication. Let me show you where this ingredient is hiding. Gluten-free products. Many people over 60 have switched to gluten-free foods thinking they're healthier. But most gluten-free products replace wheat flour with industrial starch. That gluten-free bread, those gluten-free crackers, they're often loaded with modified cornstarch. Baby formulas contain industrial starch as a thickener. Baked goods are obvious. Most commercial breads, muffins, cookies contain modified food starch. But here's what might surprise you. Hot dogs and processed meats often list modified food starch as the third or fourth ingredient. Why? Because it's cheap filler. Maltodextrin appears in sports drinks and recovery products. Maltodextrin is pure industrial starch with a glycemic index even higher than table sugar. Instant mashed potatoes, rice mixes, pasta sides, these convenient products are primarily industrial starch mixed with seed oils. Salad dressings, sauces, gravies use modified food starch as a thickener. Even some medications and supplements use starch as a binder. Now here's something that makes this worse. People rarely consume industrial starch by itself. It's almost always combined with seed oils and often sugar too. And when you combine industrial starch with seed oils, especially under heat, you create a particularly toxic combination. Let me give you examples. Potato chips are roughly 65% industrial starch and 30% seed oil. Crackers like Cheez-Its are about 70% starch and 25% seed oil. Most breakfast cereals are 80% starch. Commercial bread is typically 75% starch and 15% seed oils. French fries are about 80% starch and 15% seed oil. The foods that many Americans over 60 eat regularly are composed primarily of industrial starch, seed oils, and sugar. And here's the shocking statistic. On average, adults over 60 get about 55% of their total calories from ultra-processed foods. About 67 pounds per year comes from industrial starch alone. That's more than a pound every single week. Now, when I talk about the dangers of starch, I'm not talking about the starch that naturally occurs in whole vegetables or the potato you bake at home. There's a big difference between eating a sweet potato that you roast in your oven and eating instant mashed potatoes. In the whole sweet potato, the starch is bound up with fiber, vitamins, minerals that slow its digestion. In instant mashed potatoes, you're getting pure refined starch that hits your bloodstream like a sugar bomb. So what should you do? First, start reading ingredient labels carefully. Look for these terms: modified food starch, modified cornstarch, maltodextrin, dextrin, tapioca. Starch, potato starch and processed foods. Wheat starch, rice starch and processed foods. If you see any of these in the first 5 ingredients, that product is primarily industrial starch. Second, understand that 0 sugar on a label doesn't mean the product won't spike your blood sugar. Look at total carbohydrates. Subtract fiber. What's left is the amount that will turn into sugar in your blood. Third, focus on whole foods. A piece of chicken, a fresh vegetable, an egg, a piece of fish, these are real foods. A chicken nugget coated in starch and fried in seed oil is not real food. Fourth, be especially careful with foods marketed as healthy, low-fat, diabetic-friendly, or heart-healthy. These are often the worst offenders. They remove fat and replace it with starch and sugar. Fifth, cook more meals at home using whole ingredients. A baked potato with butter is better than instant mashed potatoes. A piece of fish with roasted vegetables is better than a frozen fish dinner. Plain yogurt with fresh berries is better than flavored yogurt loaded with starch. Sixth, if you're managing diabetes or prediabetes, understanding industrial starch is critical. You might be avoiding sugar while unknowingly consuming large amounts of starch that's spiking your blood sugar even higher. I know this information can feel overwhelming. You don't have to change everything overnight. Start with awareness. Start reading labels. Begin replacing 1 or 2 ultra-processed items with whole food alternatives. Over time, as you reduce your consumption of industrial starch, you'll likely notice improvements. Many people report better energy, clearer thinking, easier weight management, better blood sugar control, reduced joint pain, and improved digestive health. Your body has a remarkable ability to heal when you stop overwhelming it with substances it wasn't designed to process. Remember, every meal is a chance to support your health or undermine it. At 60, 70, 80 years old, you deserve to feel your best. You deserve energy, mental clarity, and physical capability. Industrial starch is silently undermining those goals for millions of older Americans who have no idea it's even in their food. Now you know. Now you can make different choices. Start today by checking one product in your kitchen. Read the label. Look for those starch ingredients we discussed. Then make one small change. Replace one ultra-processed food with a whole food alternative. Small steps lead to big changes over time. Your health is worth the effort. Your independence is worth protecting. and you have more control over your aging process than you've been led to believe. Thank you for watching. If you found this information valuable, please share it with friends or family members who might benefit. And if you're looking for more practical strategies to improve your health after 60, please subscribe. Every week, I share science-based information specifically designed for older adults who want to stay healthy, active, and independent. Here's to your health and vitality in the years ahead.